Welcome to the Winning Edge podcast, where we share focus, fueling, and faith-filled stories and strategies to give young athletes the tools they need to become the best versions of themselves as athletes and individuals.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, coach, and educator, an educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom of 2 young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, a registered dietitian nutritionist of over 18 years and also a mom of 2 young athletes. Today's guest, I'm very excited to introduce you all to. Her name is Leslie Bonci, and she's a registered dietitian and board certified specialist in sports dietetics. She's also the owner of Acting Eating Advice. Leslie is renowned both nationally and internationally as a speaker, tackling hot topics like nutrition misinformation, building a winning plate, and fueling for peak performance. She's the co-founder of Performance 365, a consulting company dedicated to sports nutrition, with over 3 decades working in the NFL, including with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, come on, where are my Taylor Swift, Kansas City Chiefs fans, right? Leslie brings a wealth of experience to the table. She's co-authored popular books like Run Your Butt Off, Walk Your Butt Off, The Active Calorie Diet, and Bike Your Butt Off. She's also contributed to chapters in leading sports medicine and nutrition manuals. In addition to her hands-on work, Leslie serves as an adjunct instructor at the University of Pittsburgh. She's passionate about empowering athletes everywhere to be fit, fueled, and fearless, which I love so much in their pursuits. Leslie, it's such an honor to have you on the show with us today.
Oh, I am so excited to be here and taking a dive into some of my most favorite things, right? As a parent, and you're both parents, we are the nutrition coaches, or kind of the grand nutrition coaches in this house since our kids are grown. But it is so important that we take an active role in this, right? We just have to. We set the stage to help our kids be the best that they can in the classroom, on the field of play, and in life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're modeling, right? So one of the parents' biggest jobs is modeling those, even if I were not a dietitian, just modeling those behaviors that I want of my kiddos.
But I think that the hardest thing as a mom who's not a dietitian and who is so out of y'all's world, it was knowing how to model it the right way, and I was doing it the wrong way for so many years until you came into my life, Stacey, and things have changed. But I think that moms like me that are not dietitians and do not understand, this is so important.
Yeah.
Because it really is. Like, we have to change how we do things too.
Oh yeah, we have to be good models.
Yep.
So that's a really great, Leslie, you have such a phenomenal background. I think I have to kick us off with this. So tell us first tell us how you got into this world of sports dietetics, because you have a phenomenal background and career in this space. And then tell us some of your favorite stories. Like, we want to know.
Okay. Well, my undergraduate degree was actually in biopsychology, so I did not get into nutrition until graduate school, first class, women and infant nutrition. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. And so I am not the non-traditional in every aspect of my life, but definitely in my professional career. So when I finished the graduate degree and the undergraduate courses and the internship and the whole thing, and then there were no jobs in the city of Pittsburgh. It's like, surprise. So we moved, and I took a job in Wheeling, West Virginia, at a cardiac and wellness center. And the co-directors were marathoners, so you had to run with them to meet with them. And this was the early 80s. We had a state-of-the-art exercise facility on site for patients, and we brought in high school athletes, to really start to exercise there. And it really like, oh, this is the perfect relationship between the exercise scientist and the dietitian. It's like, this is what I want to do. And so took every course that I could to learn as much as I could about every sport. We moved back to Pittsburgh. I called the Department of Athletics at the University of Pittsburgh and said, you need somebody to work with your athletes. And amazingly, they said yes. It's like, oh no. And now we have to figure it out. Way before, I mean, maybe it was Nancy Clark and Dr. Chris Clark and me, like we're like the fossils, but we kind of started this whole thing and worked there with the athletes for a couple of years. Then when Coach Cower was hired by the Steelers, he brought with him an athletic trainer and a strength coach who had both worked with Dr. Chris Clark at Penn State. And they said to him, we need somebody to work with our athletes. And he said, find that person. And they found me. Now, I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, yes, I do bleed black and gold because that's just kind of the way it is. Here we go, Steelers. The whole thing,
Yeah.
there it is.
Y'all and your
And
terrible
so,
towels up there, right?
but
Swinging
I,
those towels.
the turbo towel. If I had one in here, I would wave it, but there's one down too. But or in every room of this house, there is one. And I worked with them for it was probably close to 20 years, and then they decided that they wanted to go in a different direction, and so did I. And actually, Rick Burkholder, who was the VP of Sports Medicine for the Chiefs. He and I started our careers at the Steelers together as the rookies. And then he went on to the Eagles. And then when that whole group was fired and they went to KC, he called and said, well, I said, okay. And so I spent 10 years with the Chiefs, and, it was a pretty nice run. I have to say, it was really fun to be part of such an exciting franchise, and the wins didn't hurt. That was pretty phenomenal. But my philosophy of this is I've always been first and foremost an advocate. So I'm there to really champion what it is that the athlete needs, which means sometimes maybe arguing or disagreeing with some of the other conventional wisdom, like you have to be a certain body fat. Why? Show me the research. It isn't there. Or, people doing silly things like, oh, I want to have abs. It's like, that's not going to make you better on the field if you pass out. And so, really being able to establish this rapport in a fun way. And I mean, it has to be fun because otherwise they don't listen. And it also has to be all about the sound bite. Like never eat anything bigger than your helmet. They know what that looks like because it's on their heads all the time. It's like, hey,
So you're saying going to the steakhouse to have a steak as big as your helmet is not the plan, Leslie.
right?
Not the plan.
Right? I mean, this is it. But don't eat something that the color doesn't exist in nature. These are the things that they remember. I mean, in a funny way, it's like, no, a Skittle is not a grape. So let's just all be on the same wavelength about it. And that's what made it so enjoyable. One of my funniest stories when I first started working with the Steelers, and training camp is about 45 minutes from where we live, and it was a stormy night, so I was late getting there because of the rain. And so I show up and I hear somebody say, there she is! Everybody's like throwing things off their plate as if I wouldn't see. That happened to be rip night, and everybody has barbecue sauce all over the place. It's like, what are you doing here? It's like, I can see it. You didn't wipe your mouth off. It's like, let's not have that conversation. This is not about the food police. And I think right away, A, everybody laughed, but B, it took the tension out of the room. Like, I'm not here to punish you. I'm not here to make you feel bad. Yes, we're going to have some fun. Yes, you're going to get your work done. Yes, you're going to accomplish those goals, but it's going to be with that positive focus. And I've always based my practice on that, because if we tell people no, they're going to go and they're going to get that information somewhere else, and then they're going to do something stupid.
So what I
we
hear
try
you
and prevent that.
saying is that grown men in the NFL are exactly like my sixth grade baby boys that don't like no, and they don't want to be told what to do.
Always. I mean, literally, this is 3-year-olds in large bodies is what it is. It's like being with my grandchildren, except on a much larger scale. It's like,
Right.
okay, And then in my fantasy world, which never happened, was to hang over the end zone, dangling a pork chop saying, come to mama. That's what I really wanted to do. Never, can you just imagine? Never had the opportunity, but it's still there. Maybe when I'm in a walker someday and they lift me up and put me over the top. I don't know where I could go.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Well, and I love, you said something in there, and we do some sponsorship work with a company or with a select baseball organization called Texas 12. And one of the things I've always loved, and it's what I think I love the most about knowing your personality, Leslie, is their motto is be fearlessly different. And so much of what you just shared about your career path, I also think so much of how you advocate as a dietitian in our space is you are fearless. And that's what's allowed you to forge these paths that were uncharted. It's what's allowed you to challenge the status quo of what you said. Sometimes it's like, show me the research on why that's going to make you a better athlete. Oh, wait, it's not there. So,
well, yeah. And I'm trying to picture you standing up. I mean, I don't know how tall you are, but I'm envisioning you standing up to these football coaches who are not small men, right? Or these massive football players and being like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Right.
It's right. I got a very loud voice and a ridiculously large personality, which makes up for the fact that my stature is really not quite that big. Yeah, and it doesn't matter because it's first and foremost it's the respect, right? So I respect you, and I would like that back, and we're going to meet in the middle, and I'm going to listen to find out what it is that I can do for you, and I'm not going to force my opinions on you. And I think people don't always realize that in the NFL or really in any professional sport, there are collective bargaining agreements. So the only thing that's required is that there be somebody in the sports nutrition world, which unfortunately not always a dietitian, that's there. But players don't have to meet with you. You just have to be there. And so you have to create the need and the want, and for that little tease of information, or sometimes that's through tasting something that you never tried before. So here's the smoothie or the flu fighters instead of foo fighters. You make it fun. We do jello shots without alcohol. You can lure them in. Oh, sorry, no booze. But just to try it is then it's fun. And maybe they're tasting something they never tasted before. So it's all about the show and tell. Is that kind of a thing, is creating the need, then they come. So to create the need first, and then now I want to ask you that question because you speak my language. You get me. You're not trying to force your opinion or your belief on me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you built it in, which is truly kind of the holistic approach we're teaching for our make it fun, be fearless. Like, I think some of those character things are so important. Well, so I want to refocus us a second because you have such a great football background as a sports nutrition expert in the space of football, and it is football season
Oh
in
my gosh. Finally.
some folks are excited. I think
Yeah.
some parents running their kids to these multiple two-a-day practices are feeling exhausted, or having to get them there at 5 a.m. before school starts are feeling exhausted. But I want to talk a little bit about football nutrition specifically, because I think these athletes often have a lot of questions that are they're crucial for performance and recovery. But one of the most common questions I see being asked by our parents of football athletes is before a game or a practice. Like, can we talk a little bit about what nutrition looks like, even as you're thinking about whether that's pro players or young athletes? We've talked on a prior podcast. Unfortunately, we see a lot of our young kids not eating a very good breakfast in the morning, not wanting to eat their lunch or eating a slice of pizza for lunch. Schools don't allow them to take snacks throughout their day. So can you give a little bit of just wisdom and advice for what then that should look like? What should they be sending their kiddo with? Like, how should they be thinking about their day?
Yeah, and first of all, I always, when I think about sport and football in particular, so you have on field time, right? That's going to be practice and drills and two-a-days now, and plus some time in the weight room. So there's that. And how many games are there a week? One. But how many practices are there a week? Many more than one. So, it's not just about what we're doing before a game. It's what are we doing every single day so that we actually have the energy for the game. So in the middle is the physical activity, whatever that might be. And then we're preparing for and we're preparing from. It's always that way. It's kind of the parentheses around. Now, the reality is that not a lot of food beforehand. I think that's the biggest mistake. Oh, I have to eat a lot, and then it's more likely to be on the field than in the body. Like, messy, ugly, and useless. That doesn't work. So we're really looking at more snack size. So it's kind of the appetizer before rather than meal per se. But we're also thinking about cumulatively, if we're going to have practice at the end of the day, well, we can't do that on empty. So what are we doing first thing in the morning? Because, right now, even for preseason kinds of thing, yes, we can eat something on the lighter side, something that's cooling, like, a bowl of cereal with milk. That's more cooling. That's not a hot thing that might not be comfortable when the temperatures is already 90. I talked to Roberta earlier today. She's like, yes, it was like 100 degrees or whatever it was. It's been very warm here too, so it's the same everywhere. And so, I want there to be some carb in there, which I think oftentimes we've got that bypassed, like that's not necessary. Yes, it is. That's the fuel for the body. Yeah. So, that could be a PB&J if that feels like a comfortable food. That could be an overnight oatmeal cold because that can be more refreshing and it doesn't feel like it's resting so heavy in the gut. It could be like an egg wrap if we want it to be, but not a stack of pancakes with 5 eggs and sausage hanging off the side. That's entirely too much food. So, and sometimes for the kids that don't have big appetite, it's like pre-post. So half your breakfast before, half after. Okay, I'll have half the bagel sandwich before and I'll have the rest when I'm done.
Yeah.
Fine. Then we do the pre-post thing instead of feeling like we have to have too much, which I think oftentimes that's the deterrent. Too much, upset stomach, I'll never do that again. And then, oftentimes my favorite excuse I've heard from my athletes over the years is I'm too tired to chew. It's like, what does that even mean? I don't want to hear it. Nobody's too tired to chew. You're talking to me. You're not too tired. But if that is the case, so something like a smoothie or an oatmeal is more liquidy, so we don't have to put as much effort in. So that kind of the front end. The back end, and even though the window has always been try and get something in sooner than later, the reality is that the body will recover over a period of hours. However, I think that right after we're done, it's good time to think about at least starting the refueling, recovering, repletion process. Number one, with fluid, because that's critically important, and a little bit of something to eat. Appetizer, not meal. So parents, there is no need for you to pack a cooler with an entire turkey in there for your child to eat when they get to the car. They don't have to do that. It's a little bit of something. Oh, it's a little bag of trail mix. It's that other half of a PBJ. It's maybe a couple pieces of jerky and some pretzels. That's it. That's enough to really be the stimulus to start the recovery process, because oftentimes when it's hot, kids leave the field and we see them, it's like, they're almost unconscious, like The Walking Dead or The Walking Heated. They're so hot, they're so tired that literally at that point, moving the jaw is problematic, and they don't always have big appetite simply because their body has just had it. So that little bit of something to perk them up can stimulate the appetite. They get home and they shower and then they can sit down and they can eat. I also think what can be helpful, especially for those that have early morning practice, breakfast before bed. Make that the last thing you do before you go to bed, is like a snack at night that isn't necessarily just a sleeve of cookies, but okay, maybe we're doing that bowl of cereal, or maybe we're going to do like a pancake with some peanut butter on it and have a glass of milk. Do those types of things at night. You shorten the time from when you've eaten to when you eat again, so the body isn't quite so on empty, and oftentimes that can feel a lot more comfortable.
I do like that, having the breakfast at night, because that's such an easy way for parents to remember to, like, you're not having to cook a meal. It could be something that is super easy, like cereal, right?
And it's inexpensive too. I mean, that's the
and
thing. These
fills
aren't
it
high
up.
cost items. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the point that you make about people ask so often, Leslie, what should I eat before the game? What should I eat? But the point you made early on that I just want to reiterate is it's about every single day. It's about what's your fueling strategy throughout your day, not just before a game, because that's not really when you want to be thinking about some big source of fuel. You want something as fuel. But I love the point that you drive home that like nutrition starts every day, not just before the game. So I love that. Yeah.
And the other thing, just to say this and not to interrupt, but how many kids are they nervous before a game? Yes.
Yep.
Especially you kind of look and you see your opponent. It's like, oh, and parents have made this beautiful spread ahead of time, and the flour is on their face. They're exhausted with all the work they put into it, and I'll have a bite and I'm done, because their stomach is upset. So we can't always optimize pregame nutrition because we have to deal with what's happening at the gut. So to me, pregame eating starts the 2 days prior. That's when you optimize, because your body's not nervous then. So even if you eat a little bit less on game day, it's okay, because you got the insurance in the bank there, because your body's eaten well
I
a couple
love
days
that you're
before.
saying it like that too, because I remember all through high school, we would have our team pasta dinners the day before the game at night at someone's house, and it rotated, right? So, but it was always pasta. It was heavy, heavy carbs with lots of protein. And then because on game day I didn't want to eat much, and even my son, he gets his nerves, so he's like, I'm not hungry, and the idea of having like a little bit less is more before the game, I love that. Like, give a little bit
fuel
now,
you
you
need
can
to
eat
get
it
through.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, you talked a little bit about refueling. getting something within that window. One of the most common things that I see as a misconception, and I want you to talk about this even for football athletes, is that you need some massive protein shake. Like, not that you don't need protein, but
Right.
talk a little bit about that to our football players.
Yes. So when we're looking at recovery in particular, so we've just been on the field, and then we have to factor in the temperature, which is there. And, and for every football player, we work a heck of a lot harder in practice than we do in a game. What happens in a game? You play for 2 seconds and you stand for a half an hour. It's a very weird balance of power. It just is that way. Younger kids moving around more, but this is the way that it is. But during practice, everybody's moving constantly. And so what is the body depleting during exercise? It's depleting that carbohydrate. That is what the body's using to get itself from one side of the field to the other, to throw the ball, to catch the ball, to tackle, all of it. And so, to me, I think that has to be a critical component of what goes into the recovery aspect of what we do. That all of the myths that are out there, I don't need carbs. It's, okay, let's see what happened to your strength, speed, and stamina. Nosedive, because it just goes away. And so, this idea of, and those things are usually shelf stable. So when it's hot outside, I'm not worried about pretzel. I'm really not worried about a granola bar. I mean, sometimes a chocolate covered one gets a little messy. Or like a trail mix, those things are easy to have and readily available to grab. Or they could be something juicy. Let's cut up the orange and eat the orange. We know if we give kids a whole orange, they throw it. They won't eat it because that's absolutely too much work. Their fingers are cramping. It's like, now what do we do? It's like,
Their jaw hurt, their
other
fingers hurt. What other
right?
excuses do they have for why they can't do it?
Yeah, like all of it. So, so the point about this is what kids hear. Oh, it's all about the protein. Now, granted, we need that prescription, right? That's important. We have to have enough protein over the course of the day, but not to the exclusion of everything else. And this is the problem. Well, I'm just going to have this big protein shake, and now I don't have room for anything else in my gut because I just had that. And, I wanted more protein, so I'm picking a low sugar one. Great. So we have shifted the balance of power when typically after exercise, we want 2 to 1, 3 to 1 carbohydrate to protein, not the other way around. And so if anything, sometimes I will have kids like even do like a juice and maybe like a little bit of vanilla protein into the juice. So it's more juice than it is the protein. So we're getting the liquid, we're getting the carbohydrate, we're getting the protein in the right ratio instead of the incorrect ratio. Chocolate milk, yeah, or strawberry milk. For the vanilla milk, the cheese players didn't really love chocolate milk, but the vanilla and strawberry, yes, they do. And so, because it's refreshing and it's familiar, and that's the other thing about, I need this protein, and then somebody takes the taste of it, it's like, they're done because, oh my God, it tasted like the bottom of my shoe, and they'll never do it again. So, we really have to think about that. I like recovery to be comfort. That's like that. That's what you want at that point in time, like my nice soft pillow or whatever it is. It needs to taste good. It needs to be in a form that I can get down. It needs to be something that I enjoy. So yes, some protein with it. Yes, and not yes or.
What were some of the favorite recovery meals from some of the guys on the teams, the professional teams? What were some of their go-to?
Yeah, so a lot of, for the meals, is a lot of stir fry. They really eat it, like it. Things like fajitas. The bowls are really popular. So Chipotle style bowls, yes, they love it. And so that's not absence of the rice. It's there along with the bean. Always trying to push the bean. Mac and cheese. So I do my sneaky mac and cheese, and I puree cannellini beans, white kidney beans, and put it in there. It's like they don't taste it. There's nothing to pick out. Like, oh, it's green. No, it's not. You don't know it. It's like, yay. And so, those kinds of things they eat, they enjoy. It feels like a comfort food. And, they're getting something that really helps their body restore and recover. Yes, we always have meats. Some guys eat steak, but they don't all. Or the fish more, definitely. Any kind of fish, yes. Ribs popular because they are, but that's not a regular thing. It's there sometime. But, I think that's the other thing that for kids important to hear this, that when we think about professional players and this romantic version maybe we have in our head of what it is that they eat, most of them don't. They're not eating this copious amounts of food, like they're going back 5 times. I mean, I've had that once over the course of my career. It was actually with a Steelers player who had 3 entire plank steaks on his plate. And I said, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to watch you eat it. And he didn't eat them all. You know, it was like all just this big smoke and mirrors. It's like, liar, liar, pants on fire. But, you know, that kind of a thing is, oh, they have to have, no, they don't. I mean, they really, and a lot of them are eating vegetables, which brings tears to my eyes in a positive way. And, you know, they'll eat carbs. They like them, but it's not always a bunch of pasta. So there's pasta there. Not everybody chooses it. We do, like, we call potatoes a go-go. So, like, the little potatoes with a little bit of panko and a little bit of, like, a buffalo seasoning on it. Love.
I love my potatoes, and they get such a bad rap, and I feel like they are such an amazing source of nutrition. As I have on my Have a Plant shirt, which I love kind of what you do for them, and I think I tell this story, we've told it in most of our podcasts, where it's like I think I have brainwashed my kiddos at this point to know that, like, that's what's going to make you feel really good. It's going to boost your mood. It's going to give you what you need for performance. And when we talk about carbohydrates, to your point, Leslie, I think it's like we don't realize that it doesn't always have to be a ton of pasta, or it doesn't have to be a bread or a carbohydrates also come from plants. Yeah. And plants are a great way to refuel and get a great boost of nutrition and carbohydrates that you need.
You know, and in the hot weather, because it certainly is St. Joe's warm right now, and it will be at the start of the season in KC, or basically where won't it be warm? I don't know. Maybe there's one tiny little spot out there somewhere, not here right now. But you know, even on the field afterwards is like watermelon spears, or we just did the push-up pop. We just bought the little plastic bags to do it, and it was just pureed fruit. That's all. Really refreshing. So there's the Have a Plant kind of a thing that tastes wonderful, and it just feels so good at that point in time, because we've got to cool bodies down. This is a health thing. And especially for kids, because they are so much more susceptible to, we can't have them be overheated. So we want to start to cool down that internal temperature, and these are some of the ways of making that happen with a cool fuel, so to speak, right? It's cool and it tastes good and it's fun, and they'll eat it. So check, check, check.
I love that.
And you're hydrating. So that was going to be our next question for you is, in this Texas summer heat, like, let's talk about the importance of hydration for these football players that are running two-a-days and some of your strategies for that.
I have lots of them. I usually have my hydration rules. So the first one is it has to be in, not on. So if you pour it on your head, you have wet hair, right? That does nothing to hydrate your body. I mean, kind of the way that it is. You know, the second one is in, not out. If you put it into your mouth and spit it on the ground, that's great for hydrating the lawn, and it does nothing for you. So, you know, I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, but we all know what happened. Oh, it's cool to spit. No, actually, it's not. That's fluid out, not in. You know, the third thing, this idea of see your pee. You always have to talk in sound bites because this is what kids remember. There was this app for a while, not anymore. I think it was called My Pee or something like that. But kids were peeing on the phone. See, this was the problem. And then you can't take your phone back to the dealer and say, oh, excuse me, guess what I did? So that app's no longer around. But, you know, we have things posted. We were just hiking over the weekend with our little princess. And in the Rangers cabin, in the restrooms, they had the urine charts there. I think every school needs to have them. Every restroom needs to have them. Lighter and lots. The color of lemonade is what we are looking for, not the color of apple juice. And that means before practice starts. So typically, morning practice, right? Kids and adults wake up subhydrated because we don't drink overnight. That's the longest period of our day that we are without fluid. And so from the beginning of the day, let's start out strong. Let's put that glass in the bathroom. Let's drink something before we brush our teeth and after we're done. Not spitting the fluid out, swallowing the fluid. So we're already starting at an advantage. You know, I think as well for parents in particular, we have to be advocates for our kids. And that means sometimes having this conversation with the coach. I've embarrassed my own children. I can't even tell you how many times our older one was playing the basketball camp and I get a call. Yeah, he's passed out, and I ran up the hill, looked at him and said, how could you do this to me? You know better than this. And he didn't have enough fluid. Well, Mom, I was going for the Hustle Award. I said, see?
Yeah.
That didn't work well. And so you're right, this idea of being vigilant, being the fluid coach for our kids, making sure that not only that they go to practice with fluid, but we have that conversation with the coach. Did you did you build in some fluid breaks? Say it. That might make you a really unpopular parent. I don't care. It is not worth it. We've already seen how many deaths this summer from heat stroke in kids in the heat. We don't want it to be any of our kids. We don't. And so that is critically important. The more parents say it, the more likely that it occurs.
We also
And
had,
I think we also talk about the way that we drink fluid during. So
yeah.
I am, and it always sounds so counterintuitive, but taking larger gulps of fluid in instead of sips. And the reason for that is a bigger volume leaves the stomach faster. If we sip the fluids, it sits there for a longer period of time, and then it's like, whoa, what's this sloshing thing going on right there?
God, my youngest
Uncomfortable.
son
When
loves
you
doing
gulp
that.
it, it leaves the stomach faster. So those are silly little things, but they really do make a difference. So I ideally for kids, depending upon how old they are, somewhere between 10 to 20 ounces, 20 being a standard size water bottle, about a half an hour before is really what we're looking at. And that is the second fluid. The first fluid would be whatever we're having as part of breakfast. If it's that glass of orange juice, if it's that bowl of cereal, if it's that glass of milk. So we're already there. Bringing water bottles to practice is critically important to do. We can't always dictate what the coach says, but certainly when the opportunity presents itself with gulps over sips, getting that fluid in. Now, the other thing about this is what kind of fluid? What do we need? So I'm a very big believer in water for the most part. I really think that it's fine. The advantage of something like a sports drink is it encourages the drive to drink. Fun taste, fun color, the whole thing. I don't really think most kids need it because they're not Mahomes on the field. All right, younger kids, and it just isn't necessary. But if it encourages kids to drink a little bit more, I really like the idea of the little stick where they can put a little in rather than already pre-mixed, because then we're not getting used to the overly sweet taste. Never ever the sports drink with meals. It's absolutely redundant and unnecessary. We never did that with the teams that I worked with. No sports drinks in the cafeteria area. You eat the food. That's what your body needs to replace. It doesn't need another sports drink.
I love that. I love that wisdom of like, okay, sports drinks were meant, and like you think Gatorade sports science, they were engineered very specifically to these athletes that are working really, really hard and need to replace carbohydrates and
Yes.
electrolytes that they're losing because they are sweating in that moment. They weren't meant to go with dinner. They weren't really meant to go with breakfast. Like they were intended for this very specific use case, which I love.
It's not a juice box.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not. I love
Okay,
that.
let's talk a little bit about maintaining or adjusting weight for positions. So
Mhm.
I'm sure you've worked, whether it's been with the Chiefs or the Steelers, or even just other athletes you've worked with. Talk a little bit about healthy ways to, if you've got an athlete who needs to, Roberta, we talked about this a little bit, adjust weight for their position. How do you go about that?
Yes. So first and foremost to me, it is muscle preservation. I mean, that is a non-negotiable at all costs. So that we're not looking at big numbers. We're looking at relatively small changes where we can actually hold the muscle mass and more specifically target body fat. So the reality is body fat loss is 1/2 to 1 pound a week at the very most. It's not going to be more than that. So, hey, I lost 5 overnight. Well, that wasn't fat. That fluid loss, which we don't really want to see. So, I'm always about realistic expectations. A realistic expectation to the parents, to the athlete, to the position coach is this is what we can safely accomplish. So, when ideally would we start? Well, we're preseason now. So, ideally, we would have started in May.
Yeah.
So we've got about a 3 month lead in to think about that. Or, even for kids that are going to be playing basketball, wintertime. This is the time to think about making the changes to your body, not right when season starts. That is a really, really bad time.
Talk about that a little bit
Secondly, and it's
because
a big mistake.
I don't think we can sit on that enough because I think so many parents mid-season when they want to see these changes want to come in and make this, but at that point to your point much earlier in our conversation, it is about fueling them. Off season, pre-season is for making those body composition changes that you want to make. But during the season, talk about why it's so important that you're much more focused on fuel.
Yeah, and so when we're looking at during season, let's think about the fact that our kids are not just football players or athletes, they're students first and foremost. So if you are not appropriately nourished, guess what? Neither is this. And so that ability to be successful in the classroom, that ability to, interact with your friends, to have energy left over to do things. I have seen so many cranky, hangry kids because they have starved themselves to get to some whatever that weight is that they think they should be. It's just miserable for them. And there's also no guarantee that at that weight they're going to be a starter. We don't know that. I mean, a lot of this is talent and ability. It isn't always predicated upon a weight. I have worked with numerous football players that do not have ripped abs, and they've been among the most successful players out there. Mahomes has a dad bod. I mean, he does. So it doesn't really take anything away from his arm. He's incredibly talented. It is not based upon the body fat alone. And I do think we're also seeing some of the deleterious aspects of that with bigorexia and all these other things that are going on right now of unrealistic expectation because kids are bombarded with this 24/7 of a way that their body is supposed to be. And then the other component, and Roberta might have touched on it, but I'll say it too, these kids are not yet finished growing. So depending upon what Tanner stage they are at, if your body is, yes, you're pre-pubertal, you're going to have some fat. That's part of the whole process of going through puberty. It doesn't just magically leave the body. The way that it is.
Well, and that's when
you're also not going to put on muscle if your body's at Tanner stage 2. There's a reality. Parents need to hear that. Well, my kid's in the weight room and nothing is happening. Yes, and here's why. So
I'm a big advocate. Yeah. We had some friends of ours, Leslie, and I want to stick on this one a minute more. And I say it all the time is like when people come to me and they have a kiddo who's a little heavier, or he carries a little extra fat mass and he's younger and he's pre-pubescent, I'm like, you need to let puberty shake itself out on that kiddo, because as long as they're eating healthfully, they have healthy lifestyle behaviors, they're getting sleep, they're exercising, I'm a whole lot less concerned with that younger kiddo carrying a little bit of excess fat pre-puberty. Because again, to your point, so much of that changes in stages in development. We even had a friend who they came to me and they were super concerned about their son. And I said, come talk with me again post-puberty. And now you see him post-puberty. He's a football player. He's super fit. It all just balanced itself out. But I think sometimes a big piece of it is, and we said this with Roberta, we had a whole podcast on parents oftentimes can take their the way they unfortunately unhealthfully look at food and body types, and that is projected onto these young athletes. And to your point, it has so much more. They either have natural skill and talent and they're going to develop that, or they don't. And it doesn't have as much to do with what we put this emphasis on of like, oh, your body type has to look a certain way or you have to eat this certain thing. And so I feel like we can't stick on that enough of like a lot of this puberty is going to make an impact on.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And I think that parents and kids will have to be realistic. And when I'm working one-on-one, I'm always about realistic expectation. If your parents are 5'4" and 5'5", you might not be 6 feet. It just might not happen.
Genetics are a strong
way. You can't choose those genes. That's the way that it is. But I also think, but still, there are going to be kids that probably should be more aware of what it is that they're eating. So I think one of the other biggest things is, well, I'll just cut down on the amount of food that I eat. Okay, kids are growing. So we have to have energy demands for growth. They need to be able to participate in the classroom. We have to have energy demands for that. They may be involved in a sport other than the one sport is something else that they're doing. So we have to have energy demand there. And so if we go the how low can you go or the limbo approach to eating, everything falls apart. It just does. We have hungry kids that aren't going to be able to do what they need to do. They may not be hydrated appropriately, and the risk of injury goes up. And they become more susceptible to heat stroke and all those types of things. So, I'm a very big believer in getting the most for the least. So, how can we flush out that plate, so to speak? Oh, I've got this gorgeous stir fry going on, and I've added some extra veggies because now to my eyes, that looks fuller. I don't have to do a mountain of rice with a little bit of greenery on it and a steak the size of my helmet. It's like making some of those changes to things to keep the volume and keep the calories down. The idea of putting water into food. So if I puree that watermelon with a little bit of strawberry, and boy, that tastes delicious, I'm not getting a lot of calories there, but it feels more treaty. You just have a glass of plain water and ooh, let's put in a slice of lime, and no child is saying, isn't this just the best thing you've ever had? They're not. So, this way of and like parents getting out of their own head, it's not about you. They're not little adults. Their needs are really, really different. They need to be fed, not starved. It is permission, not omission. That is the game plan that we're going with.
Well, and something that you pointed out about kids that, aren't eating enough, and then they're more prone for injuries, right?
Yes.
And you were talking about injuries. And so I do want to ask you, what foods are good to help prevent injury, or what nutrients, or what do you recommend for parents to help their kids prevent those injuries?
Yeah. So, first off, we want to take care of that supporting structure. That's what we need to do. And so, bones, we've got to feed the bones, and protein is critically important to feed the bones. Getting calcium in is critically important. That's why dairy foods work really, really well in that regard. It's a great source of calcium that's there. We need vitamin D. We don't get a lot of it in food. Egg yolks do, so that's one, and some of the fatty fish do as well. That can help. My X factor is prunes because they honestly do have an impact on bone health. Now, most kids would go, is to eat them. But what I do is I chop them up finely and put them into energy bites. Know that they're there because
Okay.
that's the way. They're sweet. I mean, they do have a sweetness like a prune and dark cocoa, and I'm more than happy to share the recipe of the one that I used with the
Yes,
players.
please.
And I mean that can be a really good thing when we're looking at kind of the anti-inflammatory effect. I am a very big believer in fish and like the fatty fish. So the SMASH acronym: salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardine, and herring. That's what it is. Not all kids are saying, "Oh boy, that sounds delicious," but
Yeah, you
in a
lost me
salmon
with
case,
sardines and herring. So
yeah, right? You know what? I mean, that's
I'll
because
do the
they're
others.
fishy, right? But sometimes anchovy, it's a primary anchovy on a pizza. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I'll do that. It's the flavor that can be in something that adds a little bit of that omega-3 very, very well into the mix. Certainly looking at all fruit and vegetable because of the plant nutrients, the phytonutrients that are in there, having that anti-inflammatory roles. Now we'll talk about a smoothie smoothie. And that's actually one of the ones, like if I said to my players, eat beets, they would like run crying from the room. It's like, no. But we did like beets with a little bit of arugula and pineapple. So we called it a smoothie. Everybody lined up for it because, okay. And there was enough because of I used a little grated orange in there, so you didn't really taste the beet. And I put a little bit of tart cherry juice in it, so it's like,
Ooh,
okay,
those are
that
two
one is
great.
okay.
So love
Then you add the vodka. The vodka was for after. No, I'm kidding. But
But tart cherry juice and beets, great. Oh, that's a really great finding smoothies or adding to your smoothies. Or there's even some really great, and I think about this, we've just gotten so much better at food science, like already made smoothies. Again, just check for kind of the nutrient facts panel of what you need. But I love those as great options.
And one of the things too, because with the time that it takes to do this. So what I think works really, really well is like even something like with the beets and like blending these things up is then you pour it into ice cube trays and you have these little smoothie cubes, and that's really easy. So we could just put a few in a blender or let it defrost, shake it up in a little jar, and there it is. So it's kind of one effort with the payback on the back end. We have it ready to go. But those to me are the things that I think are protective, preventative, and proactive. And that's really what we want kids to do is think about it. Your helmet protects your head. These foods protect your body. So it's not just about the pads, it's the protection on the inside. Or the way that I always say that is, the food and fluid we have is the internal equipment. So you can put on that uniform and your helmet and your cleats. if you are not fueling and hydrating, you are not internally equipped. So that is just another way of having that
That
conversation.
is a perfect segue because I'm about to talk about the brain and the equipment that protects the brain, right? But what are the nutrients that are really beneficial for brain health and concussion recovery? Because a lot of our, even in the classroom teaching, I don't even know how many football players I have had that have had concussions where they're out for a few days, they come back, they're wearing sunglasses. Dim the lights as I can, but
Yep.
what do you recommend?
So first and foremost, when we're looking on the preventative end, number one, it's having enough fluid. People don't realize this, but this is a liquid medium up here, so we really have to make sure that we are optimizing on the fluid intake consistently each and every day. Secondly, the carbs. Yeah, they're important for brain health, and that doesn't mean that it has to be gummy bears or marshmallows. It doesn't have to be. But there's nothing wrong with having cereal or having a sandwich with bread or having some pasta, rice, potato, corn, tortilla as part of a meal. It needs to be there. Yes, I do think the benefit of the fatty fish. Even something like a salmon burger, sometimes that can feel a little bit more appealing than just eating the fish per se. Not all kids love it, but that can be really, really helpful. Leafy greens, yes, there's been some research on the benefit of leafy greens for the health of the brain. Berries, all of them, frozen, fresh, dried, doesn't matter. They all work. And sleep, which not a food, but I'll tell you what, right? This is when brains recover. So one of the things that's happening more and more because they're more available is we have all of the energy drinks in every iteration of them in every size imaginable, from the teeny shot to the and for kids where safe level is 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, so many of these things far exceed this. And then we're not having sound sleep because that half-life of caffeine is 4 hours minimally. So, all of those things are really getting in the way of brain health. So, I think before somebody said, well, I'll do creatine. And the reason for that being is even though there's some interesting research, at this point it's inconclusive to say beyond a shadow of a doubt everybody should have creatine. There may be some benefit post concussion of thinking about it, but I think it provides that false sense of security. It's okay, my kid took creatine, it doesn't really much matter, they can still lead with
Well,
their
and
head. No,
especially
you
Leslie,
can't.
like this is
No, you can't do that. And it's not creatine and have it a day because that's not providing the nutrients. It isn't doing it. It's a metabolite, but it's not a nutrient in and of itself. So we're really thinking about this from the neck up. Is this has to be fueled too, and that means enough consistently over the course of the day.
we had a great, do you know Tony Castillo? Yes. We had a
Yeah.
great conversation with him and I love this analogy that he used, but he called it the donut. And he's like, the creatine is the sprinkles on the donut. That's great. And there might be some benefits in there that, again, to your point, we're still researching. Sure, if you want to have that as a catch-all, put some sprinkles on your donut. But you can't have a donut that doesn't have yeast, that doesn't rise, that is, crunchy or too doughy, and that's the rest of your diet. And so if you come at this diet without a strong foundation, that's a really bad donut. Like the
Well,
sprinkles don't
yeah.
matter at that point.
Right, and that kind of a thing, whether it's creatine, collagen, you name it, anything in that regard, is supplements are designed to be a complement to, not a replacement for eating, right? So the underlying, that's the cake. The supplement, the icing or the cherry on the top. Yeah, it's kind of sweet, it's kind of fun, but if you don't have that cake underneath, that icing slides right off. So there it is.
I love that. Well, in true form, in what you're best at, I'll ask you to kind of tell us if there's anything that myth wise in this space we didn't hit on or that you would still want to bust for our athletes. Can you share? Is there anything else that kind of rings in your mind as you think about the many years that you've done this? Like, what are other myths you see that you just feel like they need busting?
I think certainly one of the big ones right now about electrolytes is okay, basically, if you might eat pickles or you put a little soy sauce on your food or you salt your food, or I have my salty sweaters cook their rice and bouillon easy, and it's a lot cheaper than it is to do the electrolytes. And the electrolytes alone, for the most part, this is VEU, very expensive urine. So why are we doing that? We don't need to be doing those types of things. Let's put the effort towards the fueling. toward the actual food itself. I think that's really true of so many of the sports related products that are out there is we really don't need them. We just don't. And especially young kids, they don't need them because oftentimes that's in place of something else. I didn't have lunch. I had my creatine instead. It's like, what are you talking about? That's not the calories. That doesn't work. Also true for the branched chain amino acids. That would be no. Is food. Eat the turkey sandwich. Have the tuna fish. Do the ham and cheese. That's what you need, not those other things. It just doesn't work. It sounds incredibly appealing, but it's useless, right? And at the end of the day, the body doesn't get too many do-overs. It's like, what are we doing? And, I've never ever had a young athlete, an old athlete, and anybody in between say, I want to be the weakest, I want to be the slowest, and I want to tire before I start. Never. And so, okay, are you bringing the best fueled and the best hydrated athlete to the field every day? That's what your teammates expect of you. That's what your coach expects of you. That's what you should expect of yourself. That's it. And it isn't that hard. Nobody can eat for us. Nobody can drink for us. That's on us to make that happen. And parent, to be the nutrition and the fueling coach, yes, that is our job to do that because we're the ones that are buying the food, prepping the food, bringing the food to our kids.
I thank you for doing this podcast with us because as a parent who's so removed from y'all's world, this is super helpful because we just don't know what we don't know. So
And there's no magic pill.
No,
Yeah.
and I love this. There's so much that I'm taking away from this that makes me so happy.
Anything else before we wrap up, Leslie, that we didn't cover that you would want to cover for our athletes, for the parents, a lot of moms listening, that you would want to share wisdom with them as a mom yourself?
Yeah, I do think that food should always be about comfort, right? Football is an uncomfortable sport. It is. It needs to be. There's a lot of contact going on. There's all that kind of stuff. We've got kids working in this hot weather, all those things. So we're talking collision nutrition here, but what we really want to deliver on that back end is food that kids enjoy. And I would also say there's nothing wrong with having kids be part of it. As parents, we don't always know what it is our kids like to eat. So that's kind of part of the game plan and scheduling for the week. What would you like to do? Your responsibility is to pack your snacks. Okay, that's fine. Your responsibility is to bring your bottle. That's kind of it. I use checklist all the time with kids. There it is that checklist thing. Yep, I got the cleats, 2 of them. Always a good idea. Yes, I have the helmet. Because, we have to. Yes, the socks are clean. They're not the ones that are balled up. It's like, what is that horrible smell? Everybody's been through that before. But all those types of things, if we get kids involved in it, they are more willing to take ownership of it, and they're going to reap those benefits on the back end. It's about teaching them those skills now for survival later on. That's really what our job is as parents, is to plant the seed to feed that need.
Love that, Leslie. I love that. And so much of that's what we do in our house. It's empowerment. It's empowerment because someday they're not going to live with me. And I want them to love a diverse array of foods. And I want them to have access to everything and learn what fuels and how they make choices. And so I love that wisdom. I like to joke that I'm just the inventory manager in our house. I ask everyone what they want me to buy for snacks, and I ask them what they want for dinner for the week, because to your point, if I do that, they're more likely to help get in the kitchen, eat what we're preparing, help prepare it, eat what we're preparing, because they've been involved in that process. So I love that wisdom for our parents. So thank you. Thank you for being on with us today.
Stay tuned for future podcasts where we will bring on exciting guests in the sports world, highlight spotlight coaches, athletic directors, former and current collegiate and professional sports players, sports dietitians, sports psychologists, and more.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you.
Stay tuned to learn more about how you can join our community and get more exclusive content. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X at @span_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.